Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Tax Sale Insiders. I am your host today. I'm Brian Seidensticker. I'm the CEO of Tax Sale Resources. And with me, I have a unique individual who came across and have connected several times. But Carl Spielvogel is, an investor that's come across unique situations. And I loved your stories, Carl. Let me take a step back. Welcome. We'll start with that.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and last time we talked, I just listened to some of the scenarios that you've encountered and the way you've kind of worked through those. We were joking a little earlier before we hopped on here of persistence and how you certainly are no stranger to persistence and what that can do for you in this industry if you know how to focus that persistence. I won't take the stage too long. I'll just, I guess this is for those listening. It's going to be basically a two-part series because Carl has a lot of experience on the front end of the tax sales, right? What can you do prior to the tax sale? And then he also has a lot of experience on, the post auction and unique and it's not necessarily, after purchasing the property. It might involve purchasing the property, but what can you do in those post-sale scenarios? So part one we're going to focus today on is going to be the pre-sale stories. They're more better described as stories that Carl will tell and some things he's come across. And then on part two, if you tune in next time, we'll talk about the post-sale experiences that Carl has had. So anyway, without further ado, Carl, kind of hand it over.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your background, how you got in the industry, and then let's dive into some of your stories.
Okay. I started going to real estate through Ron LeGrand and taking a bunch of courses and going to meetups. And that's how I learned a lot about it, spent a lot of time with attorneys, investors, and I just sort of jumped in and we found that property tax delinquents is our most lucrative of all the things. We do a lot of creative land subdividing, a lot of quiet titles and other stuff, but the most money we found is made in the property tax foreclosures and delinquents. And our favorite strategy is going direct to owner pre-auction. So we'll get the lists, we'll search them through, and we have this little checklist. One of the things we do is we put them into this thing called been verified to see if they're dead or alive. Then we'll go look at the property to check to see if and any value adds. And I'll show you a couple examples of that. Is it land that can be subdivided? Is it house with extra land? What's the zoning? That's real critical. And I'll show you some good examples of that. But we're going to talk a lot about how we just go pre-auction. We take the stuff. And I'm just going to probably jump into, let me show you a couple of things about what we found with tax delinquents. Everybody has issues. There can be judgments, deceased owners, divorced. We bought a lot of property for people in jail, multiple heirs, people inherited in nursing homes, hospitals. People forget they own the property, defunct corporations, financial problems. This is all the issues you're going to be dealing with when you go direct to the sellers. And some of the stuff you're going to need is be able to just skip tracing, tracking people down. Knowing your intestate laws for the dead people helps to have a badass attorney, how to structure some complex deals. This is some of the stuff you're going to need when you're going into it. But let me just jump into the deals we like the best are the dead people, because that's the biggest problem. So what we do is, again, we take the tax sale. We'll put the person in and see if they're dead or alive. Now, if they're alive, we'll simply skip trace them, call them. And one of the things we do is we simply ask them, hey, we noticed your property is tax delinquent, and we're sort of curious what your plans are with the property. Is it something you wanted to keep or you're wanting to sell? And we try to have open-ended conversations to find out their problem. That's one of the keys. You want to know what's going on in their life so that you can solve the problem. And so this is what I found our best one. I call it the Uncle Call trifecta. I didn't invent this, but it's tax delinquent, a vacant property, deceased owner. These have been our biggest avatar to go after. So I'm going to show you one of these heir deals. So this was a property tax delinquent here. And so we ended up buying this property for $35,000. We sold it for $310,000 and we made $243,000. So the first thing is you put people into bin verify. Okay. This will tell me if they're dead or alive. So you take your resource data, and then we go, okay, so both of them are deceased. Then we check for the estate file. There's no estate file. And then we'll also pull the obituary. And then what we do is we build up the family tree. And then we follow the intestate laws. So real quick, Frank died, Virginia died, we're going to his brother, he died. So as these two heirs we're looking for. Long story is you got to be persistent and you got to pivot. Again, this is a vacant house, tax delinquent, deceased owner. So if you don't solve, there's very few people can solve it. So we go full out. Long story, we couldn't find these kids. So we went to the funeral home, pulled the funeral book. We skip traced every single person in it. And we called them and they said the mom right here got remarried to police officers outside of DC. We then found article Hoffman marries Anders. They changed the boys' last names. Again, you got to be a little bit of a private investigator. So then we ended up buying it for $35,000, and then we sold it for $310,000. And after expenses, we made $243,000. So deep diving on these tax delinquents and tax foreclosures can be huge profits. So let me jump over. And if you have any questions, let me know. So here's the second one. So sometimes there'll be corporations. So a lot of people will be like, we'll leave those alone. So this was a tax delinquent corporation going to sale, vacant house, defunct corporation. So that's the same. That's the trifecta. So what we simply did on this one is we went to Secretary of State. We found out who the owners were. We called the one guy, he wouldn't answer. And then we called the wife and we couldn't get a hold of him. And the stories are real important. And the reason I tell you the stories is this is what it takes to break through on these big deals. Mm-hmm. So we called the wife, she wouldn't answer. So we called her mom, and her mom said there's a $750,000 lien. And that's why they're walking away. Well, then you got to pull the title. We pulled title. She was right. There was a $750,000 lien against them, but not the corporation. The corporation's a different entity. So we were able to get title insurance. We purchased it for $28,500. We brought her in as a partner and paid her a partner fee of $36,000. We still made $228,000. So it's like, it's being persistent. Couldn't get a whole pivot, called the mom. The mom said, wait a minute, there's a lien. Did the title search, found out the lien didn't attach to the house. And luckily, she got given the corporation in the divorce. So this was a lot of work. But again, it was $228,000 on this deal. We jump through to, now here's another deal. Now I found this one, you can find them two ways. I actually was driving for dollars. I noticed the mail was piling up, but this was also listed as a tax foreclosure. So actually what I did is I jumped the fence and looked in the window and saw the house was vacant. So we took the two owners, put them in bin verified. They were deceased, and we built out a family tree. And then this was a lot of work, but we made a deal with all of them to pay them $750 each. Because again, on these ones with the deceased people, they can't put this together. This is a fractured family, a whole bunch of different stuff going on. So we bought out all the shares from it using an attorney. And then so we're into this for $65,000. It's probably worth about $275,000. So again, when you find the dead people, vacant house, this is where the big money is. If you're willing to, now we have genealogists on staff that build out the family trees and really good attorneys we work for. So this is hard, but a lot of times it's just as simple as the people might be in a nursing home They might be incarcerated. They may have just abandoned the house for some reason. And then you've got to use your skip trace stuff. Like a lot of times we'll go on their social media, we'll go in their Facebook page, we'll do different things like this to try to find the people. So you can use this strategy also for non-dead people, alive people, and still go after them and find them. Because again, there's a problem why they're not paying the taxes. It may be financial. Again, they may be in jail. It may be a divorce, and maybe inheritance where the brother and sister hate each other, things like that. So let me go down. Now, this is important. This is the quadfecta. This is dead folks, tax lien, vacant, and value add. Now, this is so important. Let's say whether you're going to go to the tax sale and bid, or you're going to try to get it pre-tax sale, you got to take a good look at the property real quick, okay? So you want to see if there's extra land. Sometimes we found lots that were subdividable, and then knowing you got to know, learn your zoning codes. So this was one piece right here, okay, before we bought it. So this is the value add. We knew we could subdivide 2 lots. So this was another one, dead person, multiple heirs. But let's say you're getting ready to, you're just looking through your data and you're looking at all the tax sales. It's real important to go to your GIS, check it out. Of course, you want to make sure it's not a flood zone, different things, and see if you see any of these value adds. Because at a tax sale, this might have sold for maybe like 120, but you could have bought it at the tax sale for 120 and then subdivided the 2 lots off, sold them for 55 each, and then sold the house for 120. So on this one, it was an heir deal. It had a bunch of judgments. The good thing about judgments, there's a whole section I go in about that, is judgments are typically good for 10 years. You can also, with the judgments, you can let them expire. You can buy them. There's a whole lot of stuff I'll go into on the next presentation. So we paid them $40,000 subject to the judgments. We cleared the judgments, and then we subdivided these 2 lots off. I sold this lot for 55, this for 55, and the house for 112. So anybody that's working the tax delinquents, if you got the time, especially if you're going to be bidding, you want to see if there's any kind of value add. It can make a huge difference in your profitability, whether you're buying at the sale or buying it direct. Mm-hmm. This is real important for you guys to take a look at, to do your due diligence, because you're going to find stuff like this. You're going to find double lots, triple lots, and a lot of the deals we do actually is land. We make more money off land than we do houses in the foreclosure market. Let me jump down to this.
I think what I really like about this, Carl, is we tax sale resources are always looking at ways of improving community, right? And this is a way of, especially in many states, the tax sale is just a step in the process, and in many states, it's still years away, from anybody being able to do anything with that property to actually improve it, right? Because it might be multiple years of redemption period on that, right? And what you'd mentioned, focusing on vacant, like abandoned properties, those aren't going to get any better over that course of time, right? And being able to find a solution to take that property from what is likely one of the biggest eyesores, on the street, right, and trying to get it back remodeled and from the county perspective, tax flow back to the county, and just putting the property back in a decent state. That's what I really dig about this. Sorry to sidetrack, but that's one of the things that appealed most to me when you were telling me some of these stories is the problem that it's solving in a very unique niche that in many areas still these properties just sit there. They sit there and deteriorate and rot, and a couple of years down the road they might go to the tax sale purchaser, but at that point it's even in worse shape, right, and less options at that point. So anyway, sorry to totally sidetrack us.
That's great. That's why we go direct before the sale, and we even start with the tax delinquents before they get to the foreclosure process. So
Right.
we go after the foreclosures, and we also go after the delinquent ones too. So we get to them early. And here's another example of one. This one is on Ablewood, and this will sort of segue in a little bit to some of the stuff we'll talk about how to make money off the post stuff. So this one, what we did is we called up the heirs, and we just said, hey, your heirs this property. I'm just curious, what are your plans for the property? I wanted them to talk. So they said, well, our sister is really mean. She lives in the house. She's one of the heirs. She won't move out. So what I said, well, if you can get your whole family together, I can pay you more money than if I have to buy out, fractional interest. I said, I'm not going to talk to you for 2 weeks. Go talk to your sister, make a deal with her. They went and talked to her. They couldn't make a deal. This does this. And, I would rather buy the whole thing, but if I have to buy the partial interest, then I'm going to pay less. So here's like, we do a lot of research on it. And interesting, one of the guys got out of jail and his wife shot him. So there's always there's always craziness in all these things. But here's the family tree. We used a genealogist out, used the intestate laws. So what we did is we just approached them and we bought out 90%. So, with these heir things, people think, well, you got to buy the whole thing, right? And get title insurance. Well, no, if we can buy out whatever percentage, we can either force our partition sale on the property, or we will take it to that. Or what we like to do is just let it go to the tax sale to collect excess proceeds. So we built it out, and we ended up getting 90% of it. I think we spent about $4,400. This was the opening bid for $8,800. So that was all the taxes, and it sold for $195. So there's also a 5% selling fee in North Carolina when they do the tax sale. So there'll be $10,000-ish in taxes. So you'll take about $19,000 minus that. So there's going to be about $175,000 in excess proceeds. Well, we own 90% of this property, so we'll get 90% of the 175. So this is an interesting way you can do it pre-auction. You buy out the shares, and if you can't get everybody, let it go through the auction, and you collect the excess proceeds from the sale. Mm-hmm. Bad thing is it takes us about 6 months to 9 months by the time the sale's over before we go through the hearing and all this stuff to get the excess. Tough on cash flow. But this is a great way too. Again, we can buy out stuff. And then I'll give a little advertisement. I'm always looking to joint venture with people. If you have any of these heir deals or judgments, title issues, we're really good at this stuff. We'll joint venture with you. We have the easiest phone number, 704-7777, or this is my direct number right here, 704-995-5385.
That's awesome. Was this, you guys, are we, I know we were going to dive into part 2, next time on the what to do after the sale. Are we still running through pre-auction stuff?
Yeah,
Carl, sorry.
Yeah, we can go through a couple more things that we do look pre-auction stuff also, and then we can dive into that. So what's really cool is we'll run title on a lot of these things. I got a guy for $100 to run title. You can run title. So this one was actually going to go to the tax sale. So judgments are a great way to make money in these kind of pre-auction and post-auction too. So this was a defunct corporation. And again, it was getting ready to go to tax sale, but we went to them direct. We ran title. There's there's $25,000 in taxes, a $73,000 loan to HT Supply, and a $66,000 judgment for Ford Motor Credit. So we basically approached them and said, hey, it looks like you got a lot of problems here, and what are your plans? Or like, we tried to sell the property, but we got all these problems. So we said, how about we just give you $15,000 and take over your problems? And this is what I love with judgments. Judgments are usually typically good for 10 years, and then they expire. And you can buy judgments, you can pay to get them released, or you can discount judgments. So we bought this for $15,000. And then here's the first judgment. This is a judgment to HD Supply, and it's running up at 8% interest. It was up to $73,000. So what we did is we just skip traced HD Supply and called them up. And of course, we had authorization to release from the other owners. We said, look, you have this judgment. It's like 7 years old. It's going to expire. We'd like to buy it. And they said, well, how much you offer? And we said, 15,000. They're like, can you pay 16? So we bought the judgment. So we're creating equity in these things by buying the judgment and discounting the judgment. So we own the property with title insurance subject to the taxes and these two judgments. We also knew this property was worth $250,000. So we bought this judgment for $16,000. And then this is the other one. This is the Ford Motor Credit judgment. And it was up to $63,000. So we called up a negotiated discount and got it discounted, and we paid them $22,000. Then we were able to, here's the breakdown on the whole deal. So we end up making $143,000 on this deal by buying it with the judgments. Little bit risky, but like Ford Motor Credit, HD Supply, they don't even research people own property. All they do is try and collect. They didn't even know these people own property. It's amazing. If they were smart, they would have said, hey, we've got this property's worth $250,000. We'll just wait to the sale and collect excess proceeds. I don't know why they do that, why they don't really try to collect. So the moral of the story on this one is that when you're doing these tax delinquents, I'm going to make this statistic up. It could be wrong. I would say 10% of them will have some kind of judgment on them or something like this that gives you a chance to buy the judgment, discount the judgment, or we could have just waited probably 3 more years and both those judgments would have expired. And then we would have even less in the property.
Got it.
So this is another good thing when you're pre-closures, giving people some money and then taking over the judgments and then and negotiating. And sometimes you can even pay to release the judgments. You can say, hey, you got this judgment. Okay, for example, this HD Supply one, the reason we bought it is we wanted to keep Ford Motor Credit, who's in third position, further back. So that, that just protected us. So that makes sense because it's in further clocked. So we wanted to buy the HD Supply judgment, and then, Ford Motor Credit's further back. So even if they sort of knew about the property, then they would be like, well, I'd say, dude, you're like third position way back. You don't have a lot of leverage. We're going to give you, $22,000.
Got it.
So I think that statistic is about right. 10% of them, you'll find that they have judgments, and and I got lots of other examples of judgments. So it's like a niche within a niche of the tax foreclosure of working the tax foreclosures.
Very interesting.
See if I got okay. I go back. There's one more. Sorry, a little bit. Well, yeah, that's so that's probably some of the stuff again. And I'll just show you, this was just another example of one that had a $700,000 judgment. So this property had a $700,000 judgment against it. But the judgment was getting ready to expire. It was only good for 4 more months. So what we did on this one, because again, they're good for 10 years, they can renew them. Now, this is really important. And of course, check with your attorney. I'm not an attorney. But if they renew the judgment, it only renews against the person, not the property. So once I put it into my land trust, if they would have renewed this, it would just renew against the person. And this was a defunct bank whose assets have been sold off. So I knew they were not going to renew the judgment. And even if they had, it just renews against the individual, not the property. So we paid these people $69,000 for this lot and this lot. We subdivided these into 3 lots, sold these for $69,000 a piece, traded this lot for this lot. And it just made sense. We're like, hey, we'll take it with this $700,000 judgment. And the guy's like, fine, just pay me $69,000. So that was another example of, of judgments and working through them and stuff. So this
interesting.
Yeah.
It's always fascinating, Carl. I guess the couple of things I want to revisit that you mentioned, right? I think, and I've heard this, some of these stories a couple of times, but the key here is there's a lot of information here, right? And you mentioned it, but you breezed over it, so I want to revisit it.
Yeah.
There's a lot here, especially for somebody new to try and do everything that you do, right, themselves, this day one. But you'd mentioned that you work with folks, or you're willing to I don't know, I'll say buy the lead, or work with folks that maybe come across these things, don't know exactly what to do, but they do think it meets what you're looking for. You'll work with folks like that.
Yeah, we joint venture with people
on
deals like that, or sometimes we'll pay them for the lead, or it all depends on the deal, how much work, who puts the money in, And like I tell people when I first got started, it's like, well, what's 100% of zero? It's better to joint venture, learn this stuff, and the key is basically to skip trace the people, knock on the doors, and try to get in front of the people and just find out what's going on. That it's really that simple. And then you got to solve their problem. That's the whole key to going direct, is finding a way to get in contact with them, and then just ask any question, find out the problem, and solve the problem. Like, again, multiple people have been in jail. We've tracked down in nursing homes. Again, it could be like divorced, a husband and wife, and you just got to figure out what's going on, because their tax foreclosure, there's some kind of problem. It's not always financial.
Right.
It could be all these other things. People moved out of the country. Just there's all these different issues that could be judgments. They could have an IRS judgment, and so that's why they're just leaving the property. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know you mentioned it before, but if they do want to reach out to you, especially the folks that are listening, what was the phone number again?
Well, our business phone number is 704-777-7777, and just leave a message if we don't answer it. Or this is my direct number, 704-995-5385. Or you can email me, although stuff gets lost in my email. I'm very disorganized, believe it. Carl's Real Estate Solutions at Gmail. So if you email me, you may want to make sure you text me or call me, So
got it. So if anybody's listening that comes across these sort of unique situations and maybe wants to work with Carl on a solution to that, there's your phone number. The other thing you'd mentioned, I just want to reiterate, every state's laws are slightly different, what you can't do, right? So before you do any of this and run out, and start knocking on doors, is make sure you've talked to or consulted an attorney in that state, just to understand what you can and can't do before you start. I think things that come to mind of almost never do you have the right of actually going in a property, right? So how you figure out, it's vacant, right? You just need to know what you're getting yourself into before you get yourself in trouble, obviously. Well, Carl, I know we're going to hop back on next time and talk about the stuff that happens post-sale, which you also have many fascinating stories about. But for today, I appreciate it immensely for filling us in. Hopefully some listeners found this as fascinating as I did, and we'll talk more next time. Thank you again.
Sure.
All right. Good luck, everybody. Talk to you soon.